Hello and welcome to the Brandon Smith Rugby channel here on YouTube. And the Six Nations second round is about to kick off tomorrow. And the first game of the weekend is England, who host the Italians. England, of course, will be looking to bounce back after losing against Scotland at home for the first time since 1983, losing that one 6 points to 11. While Italy will be looking to improve from their loss against the French by losing 10 points to 50 at the Stadio Olimpico. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe. It's free to do as we push towards 1,000 subscribers. And I will be doing a match watch along here on the channel, so you can join us then. And we'll start the coverage for that one at about 2 o'clock. Anyway, it's time to get on with the preview. One thing I always like to do is have a look at the recent results between the two sides. It gives you an idea of who has had dominance in the fixture over the past few years. And the reality is England have always dominated this fixture because Italy have never beaten England. In fact, the closest they've ever came was in the 1995 Rugby World Cup pool stages out in South Africa, when they lost 20 points to 27. And since then, in the past 5 games, it's been very much a dominant time for England. The past 5 games looks like this. So in the Six Nations back in October, when we were finishing it, England ran out 34-5 winners out in Italy. Then in a Rugby World Cup warm-up back in 2019, England won 37-0 up in Newcastle. Then in the Six Nations 2019, England won that one 57 points to 14. Then in the Six Nations before that, in 2018, England won away in Rome 46 points to 15. And in 2017, England also won that 36 points to 15. So it's been a very, very dominant time for England over Italy, especially over recent years. But this game has a different edge to it, of course, with England losing and Italy losing as well. But does anyone realistically believe that Italy can beat England? There might be the odd Welshman here or there who generally believes that that might happen, or an Italian, but it's very, very unlikely. But I'm here today just to show you what kind of game can we expect, where England can improve, what will they look to do, and the same for Italy as well. Where can Italy look to improve? What have we learned from the past few games, etc. Let's take a look at England first of all. Then England last week against Scotland, there's no denying it. They were very, very poor. Full credit to Scotland. Scotland were the better team and deserved to win that game. The big issue for me was the fact that England just didn't have the ball at all. In fact, Scotland had 58% of the possession, with England only having 42% of possession. And the possession that they did have, they ended up kicking it away. They kicked away 18.62% of the ball they had. They just kicked it away. And it seemed as if Farrell at 10, who had a very difficult game, would get the ball and wouldn't know exactly what to do with it and would just kick it away after 3 or 4 phases. And that's credit to the Scotland defence, but also there's no creativity. Another big issue for England in that game, Lawrence at centre didn't touch the ball until the 60th minute. And that's shown again in the stats where they had 0 clean breaks throughout the whole game. So that's a big issue for England. There's no creativity. And I think as we look at the team selection in just a second, that will really show. I think Eddie's seen that and has put a few players in who will have a little bit more of a creative spark. The other big issue for England, and it probably won't affect them as much in this game against Italy because I think we all know the way it's going to go, but looking further along into the tournament, you'd have to say that the discipline was very, very poor last week. 15 penalties given away. I think they were lucky to only have 1 player sent to the sin bin. And finally, the final issue for England has got to be the fact that some of their players just simply haven't played rugby. A lot of them have been picked, having only played once or twice in the past 4 months or so. And going from not playing at all to suddenly playing in an international game where Scotland will really want to win and they're a team on the rise and they're playing a good style of rugby. And the fact Scotland played so well in that game is a huge issue, you'd have to say, for this team. But what were the positives from the game? Well, I think there will be a few positives. I think the one thing was England's defence wasn't actually that bad. The fact is they held Scotland out for a large part of the game. They only lost by 5 points. An intercept try would have won it for them. And I think that's where Scotland would have been so nervy about it. The result of the game didn't really paint the true picture of the game itself. But let's take a look at the England team for this game. Let's take a look at what Eddie Jones has decided to do. It'll be on your screen now. So England have decided to go with this team. So starting with the fullback, Elliot Daly is at fullback with Anthony Watson on the wing alongside Johnny May on the other wing. Henry Slade then comes in the centre alongside Owen Farrell, who moves to centre with George Ford coming in at 10. I think that's a creative decision to try and get a little bit more creativity. Ben Youngs keeps his place at 9, and then the forwards look like this. Billy Vunipola at 8. Tom Curry comes in for this one, 29 caps for him. Courtney Laws, Northampton Saints, wearing the shirt today, 86 caps for him. He comes in alongside Johnny Hill. Itoje then at 4, and the front row changes quite a bit. Kyle Sinclair comes in after his suspension is completed with Luke Cavendish at hooker and Mako Vunipola in the front row. The finishers look like this: Jamie George, Ellis Genge, Will Stewart, Charlie Hughes, Ben Earl, Jack Willis, Dan Robson and Max Malins. So those are the team for you. And as I said, George Ford is the big name who comes into this team for me. You will give that little bit of creativity to this side. Let's take a look at some footage of what George Ford will do against the Italians. So why has George Ford been brought into this squad? Well, I believe it's for creativity. Owen Farrell simply did not show enough creativity from the number 10 shirt. The number 10 can dictate the way the game goes and can dictate the tempo, the way the team attacks. George Ford has the ability to beat a man and score tries with a little bit of pace, but also just has that attacking mindset that he wants to go for the pass or he wants to go for the run. He's also a great kicking option as well if Farrell has to go off later in the game, and is highly experienced. His ability to bring players into the game is something once again that England struggled with yet last week. Lawrence didn't touch the ball until the 64th minute, but George Ford will certainly bring players much more into the game. So there we go, we've looked at England. Let's take a look at Italy, and how do we assess where Italy are at the minute. Last week, of course, they lost 50 points to 10 at home against France. It's very difficult to understand where they're at because of how good France were. And I think the big word to describe Italy's performance last week would have to be naivety. I felt they were very naive, especially in defence. And we'll have a look at some stats in a second that back that up. Although they were naive, they actually created a lot of opportunities to score tries. In fact, they had more possession than France, 57% possession to 43% possession. And their territory was actually pretty good at 53% compared to France's 47%. Which then tells me the two big problems for them are finishing opportunities and defence. And if they can fix that, they'll be a decent side. But the fact is, their defence was so bad at points. There was one try, I think it was Cretin's try, where all the players on the left side of the pitch, it was doing the rounds on Twitter, all the players on the left side of the pitch, there's no one on the right. So even if Cretin doesn't score his try there, the ball just goes out wide and there's 4 or 5 Frenchmen who are just completely free, and nobody is covering that area for Italy, which is a concern. They got into the French 22 so many times in that game, and yet they only came away with 0.64 points when France came away with 4.27 points, which is a huge difference. And it just shows how clinical France were on the day, but also how little Italy managed to do. They did, of course, have that disallowed try, and we'll take a look at Stephen Varney in a minute because he's a real prospect and someone who speeds the game up, and maybe here in Wales we've lost a trick because he was born in Wales. Let's take a look then at the Italy team for this game. It'll be on your screen now for you to have a look. I'll try not to butcher too much of the pronunciation, but I cannot promise anything. Starting with the fullback then, Jacopo Trula starts at fullback. He played pretty well last week with Lucas Sperandio and Montano Ione on the wings, with Ignacio Brex and Carlo Cana comes into the starting lineup for this one. Halfback pairing, Paolo Gavbisi and Stephen Varney. And then the rest of the forwards are Michel Lamaro, Johan Meyer, Sebastian Negri, David Sisi, Marco Lazzaroni, Marco Riccioni. Luca Bigi is captain with Andrea Lavotti. On the bench then, we have Gianmarco Lucchesi, Danilo Fischetti, Giosso Zilocchini, Nicolo Canone, very exciting young player coming through, Federico Ruzza as well, as a good player coming through, Guglielmo Palazzani, Tommaso Allen is back in the squad, really good to see him back after injury, and finally Federico Mori is the final player in this squad. So what can we expect from Stephen Varney in this game? Well, for sure, his player is going to look to speed the game up. He has that attacking intent and awareness of who is around him. He's a confident player for a young 19-year-old, and that is something to take into consideration when thinking about this Italian team. The average age of this side is only 24. Expect him to play with ball in hand, to run our position, and also to create chances. So there we go. We've looked at both squads. We've looked at some footage of each players. So Stephen Varney for Italy and George Ford for England, and the impact they can have on this game. How do I see this one going? Well, England are damned if they do and damned if they don't in this game. Simply put, I think if England play well and win with a bonus point, everyone will be like, well, you should have done that anyway. If they don't, people are like, well, you should have put a bonus point on Italy. I do think England will get a bonus point. I think it'll be a pretty comfortable afternoon for England. The thing for Italy is they've got to stay in the game for the first 20 minutes because it could get embarrassing like it did against the French. France were 30 points up at half-time, and really France could have put even more points on this Italian side. So it's important that they keep it competitive for at least the first half if possible, and that they go in close. I don't give a chance for Italy to win this game. I cannot see Italy winning this game at all. I'm going to say England 40 points to 10. I think Italy will get a try, but I just think England's power will be way too much for this Italian side. But there we go. Those are my thoughts. I'd be eager to hear your thoughts, so make sure to put them down in the comments below. Give me your predictions. There will be another preview dropping tomorrow for the France against Ireland game, but also on the 3bod Rugby channel, YouTube channel, there is a match watch along tomorrow of Wales against Scotland. I'll drop a link to that down below along with the preview for Scotland against Wales. Anyway, that's all from me. Make sure to subscribe here to Brandon Smith Rugby, and I'll see you over the weekend for the watch-alongs. See you then. Peace.